picture this. You are sitting in a sterile, overly air-conditioned corporate boardroom.
Oh, yeah, the classic high-pressure setup.
Exactly. Across the table from you is a panel of veteran airline captains. And you have spent your entire life preparing for this exact moment.
Right.
You've logged thousands of hours, you've passed the grueling simulator evaluations, your suit is perfectly pressed. You are so close to landing your dream job at a major airline, you could practically smell the jet fuel.
You're right there.
But then the lead interviewer leans forward, looks you dead in the eye, and asks this seemingly simple but, incredibly loaded question. They ask, how do you handle an unsafe crew member?
Oof. It is the ultimate trapdoor question. I mean, on the surface, it sounds like a standard hypothetical scenario.
Just a routine HR question.
Yeah, exactly. But in reality, it is a highly calibrated psychological X-ray. They are looking right through your flying credentials to see what happens when your authority, your safety, and your career are placed in direct conflict.
And that tension is exactly why we are pulling apart this document today.
Yeah.
Because our source material is a set of excerpts outlining the graduated protocol for aviation safety intervention.
It's a fascinating document.
It really is. And the mission for this deep dive is to completely unpack this four-step, action-oriented protocol. Because the reality is, this protocol extends far beyond the flight deck.
Oh, absolutely.
We're looking at a literal masterclass in high-stakes conflict resolution, human psychology, and navigating incredibly complex hierarchical power dynamics.
Yeah, it's a framework you can apply to your own life, whether you are trying to survive a tense marketing meeting or, pushing back against a senior partner at a law firm.
Or managing a crisis in an emergency room.
Yeah.
So, okay, let's unpack this because the premise embedded in this interview question is just wild.
It is.
By the time you reach this stage, the airlines already know you can fly a plane. They aren't testing your stick and rudder skills. They are testing a very specific, almost paradoxical psychological profile.
Yeah, they are probing for a specific mindset. And to prove you have it, you have to speak their language.
Right.
The text highlights two massive concepts the panel is waiting for you to invoke. The first is CRM, which is crew resource management, and the second is SMS, the safety management system.
Right. Those are the big buzzwords.
Exactly. The document explicitly states that your answer must demonstrate dedication to these concepts through a graduated escalation of intervention.
I want to stop right there on that phrase, actually, because graduated escalation of intervention sounds like a piece of legal jargon drafted by a committee.
It is very dry.
It's so clinical. But in the context of a life or death emergency, it actually demands an incredible amount of restraint.
What's fascinating here is the deliberate choice of the word graduated.
Yeah.
I mean, think about it. When human beings perceive a threat, especially a sudden, life-threatening one.
Right, like a plane going down.
Exactly. Our biological instinct is not to be graduated.
No, not at all.
Our instinct is immediate, overwhelming action. We get an adrenaline dump, the amygdala takes over, we want to yell, we want to grab the controls, we want to neutralize the threat instantly.
Fight or flight.
Right. But leaping straight to extreme measures in a highly complex technical environment creates secondary chaos. It introduces panic into a system that requires absolute precision.
So by forcing a graduated response, you're essentially proving to the interview panel that you can override your own fight-or-flight reflex.
Precisely.
You are demonstrating that even when the adrenaline is spiking, you're tethered to a procedural discipline. You don't just react, you process.
That's the key. You process. And this ties directly into those two concepts we mentioned, CRM and SMS.
Let's break those down.
Sure. So crew resource management changed the modern cockpit from a dictatorship, where the captain's word was absolute law and everyone else was just there to flip switches on command.
The old captain is God mentality.
Exactly. It changed it from that into a managed system of human and technical resources.
Yeah.
But the safety management system, the SMS, is the broader corporate religion.
Let's actually define SMS, because the source uses it heavily, but it can easily sound like just another corporate buzzword. What does a safety management system look like in practice?
So an SMS is a comprehensive data-driven framework for managing risk across an entire organization. It's the shift from reacting to accidents after they happen to proactively hunting for hazards before they cause a crash.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah, it relies on non-punitive reporting, constant data analysis, and building a culture where safety supersedes the organizational hierarchy.
Which is huge.
It is. When the text says the panel is testing your dedication to the SMS, they are asking if you are a true believer in this proactive philosophy. They want to know if you possess the moral courage to defend the system against a superior officer who is violating it.
That requirement of dedication implies a level of deep personal conviction. It makes me think of this interview less like a standard driving test where you just show the DMV instructor you can parallel park. It is much more like an audition for a high-stakes bomb defusal team.
That's a great way to put it.
But the catch in this audition is that your partner on the bomb squad might be having a really bad day, or they might be completely misreading the wiring of the bomb.
Yeah.
You have to prove you can manage the bomb, which is the airplane, while simultaneously managing your partner, all without triggering an explosion in the cockpit or the sky.
The bomb squad analogy captures the dual-track processing perfectly. You are managing the mechanical reality of the machine and the psychological reality of your colleague.
Right.
But the protocol doesn't leave this as an abstract philosophy. It gives us a rigid, four-step behavioral guardrail.
Which is where the text gets incredibly practical. Step 1 of this protocol, when you first notice a safety concern, is to inquire and advocate.
Yes.
The document says you must start by asking for clarification in a polite, non-escalating tone. And the justification the source gives for this is staggering in its humility.
It really is.
It explicitly states you do this because the other pilot may possess information you lack.
That single sentence is arguably the most important psychological pivot in modern aviation safety.
Really?
The most important.
I think so. By forcing the intervening pilot to consciously consider that they might be the one missing critical data, the protocol forces humility into the equation. It demands curiosity rather than accusation.
I have to challenge the reality of that, though.
Okay, go ahead.
Does saying, "I think you're missing something," or asking a polite question really sound polite in the moment?
Well,
I mean, if I'm sitting next to a captain who is dropping the landing gear way too early and I say, "Hey, what are you seeing that I'm not?" Couldn't that easily be interpreted as incredibly passive-aggressive? It requires a monumental level of tone control.
tone control is exactly what is being tested. Think about it. If your underlying assumption is that the other pilot is an idiot who is trying to kill you, your question will drip with condescension.
True.
The protocol requires you to genuinely entertain the possibility that you are wrong.
That you're the one making the mistake. Right. Maybe they received an air traffic control instruction while you were looking at a chart. Maybe they see a conflicting aircraft out their window that you can't see from your seat.
Okay, I see.
If you assume they have a piece of the puzzle you lack, your inquiry naturally becomes an invitation for them to explain their reality. You're asking them to update your mental model rather than attacking their competence.
Okay, assuming you manage the tone perfectly and they explain their action, but you still realize they are making a dangerous mistake.
Right, the danger's still there.
The second half of step 1 is the advocate portion. The text says you must state your safety concern and advocate your position by pointing directly to the company manual or FAA regulations.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, pointing to the manual is a masterstroke of psychological diffusion. It executes a perfect maneuver of depersonalization.
Depersonalization. Let's dig into the mechanics of that. How does pointing at a book change the emotional temperature of the room?
Well, think about the ego dynamics. If I look at you and say, "I think you are flying this approach too fast, you need to slow down," I have instantly created a localized conflict.
Yeah, it feels like a personal attack.
Exactly. It is pilot A versus pilot B. It is my judgment, my experience, and my authority pitted directly against yours. Human nature dictates that you will instinctively defend your ego and push back against my judgment.
Because I don't want to be wrong.
Right. But if I open the manual and say, "Hey, the company profile limits this approach to 180 knots and we are currently at 200 knots, the architecture of the conflict changes entirely.
Because it's no longer me against you, it is the action against the manual. You've removed yourself as the source of the criticism.
Exactly. I am no longer the antagonist. I am merely the messenger for the company's agreed-upon standard. I have triangulated the conflict.
Triangulated. I like that.
It saves the other person's ego because they aren't yielding to my superior judgment. They are simply realigning with the manual.
This reminds me of cooking a complex meal with a very stubborn friend.
Oh, that's a good analogy.
Let's say you're making a complicated soup, and your friend grabs a massive handful of salt and is about to dump it into the pot. If you scream, "What are you doing? You are ruining the soup. You have no idea how to cook," they're going to get incredibly defensive.
Oh, yeah, an instant argument.
You'll end up in a screaming match, the soup will probably burn, and dinner is ruined.
Right.
But if you point to the cookbook on the counter and say, "Hey, the recipe says we only need 2 teaspoons of salt for this volume of broth," Did I miss a step where we doubled it?
Right.
You preserve their dignity. You let the recipe be the bad guy.
That is a perfect distillation of the mechanic. You are offering them an elegant off-ramp.
An off-ramp, yeah.
They can simply say, you're right, I misread the recipe, and the crisis is averted without anyone losing face. And if you are listening to this and you work in a corporate environment, this is highly applicable.
Oh, absolutely.
If your manager asks you to bypass a data privacy check to rush a product launch, telling them you're being reckless will get you fired.
Probably, yeah.
But pointing to the compliance charter and asking for clarification on how this request aligns with Section 4B depersonalizes the refusal.
But let's look at the terrifying gap between theory and reality here.
Yeah.
You pointed to the manual, you were polite, you offered the off-ramp,
Yep.
and the captain just told you to shut up, mind your instruments, and let them fly the plane.
The worst case scenario.
The cookbook didn't work. Your friend dumped the salt in anyway. The cockpit is now officially toxic, the ego is fully engaged, and the danger hasn't stopped.
Right.
The document recognizes that politeness fails, which forces a complete shift in strategy.
This is where the protocol demands an escalation that breaks the locked door of the flight deck. Step 2 is to involve a third party.
Okay.
The text states that if the individual dismisses your polite inquiry and advocacy, you must utilize your CRM resources. You bring in objective, outside experts to gain clarification and resolve the dispute.
And it specifically names 3 entities, right?
Yes. Maintenance, dispatch, or the chief pilot.
The fact that this is codified in a formal protocol is wild to me. You are thousands of feet in the air or sitting on a live taxiway, and you are instructed to essentially call a referee.
It is a massive escalation because you are formally expanding the arena of the conflict. Let's look at why the text names those specific roles.
Okay.
They represent different domains of absolute truth. Maintenance represents the mechanical truth. If the dispute is about whether an engine vibration reading is a critical failure or just a known sensor glitch, you get the head mechanic on the radio to break the tie.
Makes sense.
Dispatch represents the logistical and atmospheric truth. If the argument is about whether a line of thunderstorms is safe to penetrate, you call the dispatcher who has the macro-level radar and fuel calculations.
And the chief pilot.
The chief pilot represents the authoritative truth. If the disagreement is about company policy, legal minimums, or fundamental airmanship, you call the boss.
The source explicitly refers to these people as objective outside experts. I want to focus on that word objective.
Yeah, that's crucial. The objectivity comes from their physical and psychological distance from the hazard.
Right. They aren't on the plane.
Exactly. They are sitting in a well-lit, quiet office on the ground. They are not experiencing spatial disorientation. They aren't deafened by the noise of the wind over the nose. They aren't feeling the physical vibration of the aircraft.
Wow.
And most importantly, their ego is not tied up in the immediate interpersonal clash happening in those 2 seats. They break the one-on-one deadlock by introducing a cool, detached, mathematical perspective.
I have to pause and just imagine the sheer unbearable awkwardness of executing this step.
It's brutal.
Just put yourself in the physical space of a cockpit. It is tiny. You are sitting shoulder to shoulder with the captain, literally inches away.
Yeah.
You just politely questioned their flying. They aggressively told you to back off. And now the protocol dictates that you pick up the radio or the satellite phone and call the chief pilot to settle a dispute.
Right in front of them.
Yes. And the person you are reporting is sitting right there, listening to every single word you say, staring at you. The amount of professional courage that requires is staggering.
It is deeply, suffocatingly uncomfortable. It is a moment of profound interpersonal friction. But that friction is exactly what the interview panel is probing for.
They want to see if you'll flinch.
They know it's awkward. They want to know if you possess the fortitude to endure extreme social and professional discomfort in the name of safety. Are you willing to be the most hated person in a 5-foot radius if it keeps the aircraft from hitting a mountain?
Here's where it gets really interesting to me, conceptually. This step completely redefines the C in CRM.
How so?
Crew resource management doesn't just mean the crew inside the metal tube. By forcing you to call maintenance or dispatch, the text is declaring that the crew extends to the people on the ground.
That's a great point.
Your resources aren't just the co-pilot and the flight attendants. Your resources include the mechanics in a hangar in Atlanta and the meteorologists in an operations center in Chicago. It paints a picture of a massive interconnected web of safety.
It dismantles the myth of the lone heroic pilot. Aviation relies on distributed cognition. When you are stuck in a localized conflict, the smartest thing you can do is zoom out and pull the extended network into the problem.
Yeah.
Again, applying this to the listener's world. If you are a junior executive locked in a battle with your department head over a financial compliance issue, and the department head won't listen to the policy, you don't just keep arguing in circles.
You escalate.
You bring in an outside auditor or the legal department or HR. You break the localized deadlock by importing objective authority.
But what if you don't have time for a conference call?
Well, that's the nightmare scenario.
The protocol acknowledges that sometimes the third party can't resolve it, or the situation is degrading so rapidly that picking up a radio is a waste of precious seconds. You are out of time, and the danger is imminent. This triggers the most intense, severe section of the document. Step 3. Stop the operation. The ultimatum.
We have crossed the Rubicon here. The text outlines a very specific, highly severe set of conditions that trigger this step.
Okay.
It says you must issue this ultimatum if the crew member is willfully negligent, actively breaking standard operating procedures, or endangering the flight.
Let's parse that language, because willfully negligent is a massive escalation from step 1, where we assume they might just possess information we lacked.
The language is deliberately severe. Willfully negligent implies intent. Actively breaking SOPs implies conscious defiance.
Right.
We are no longer dealing with a pilot who misread a chart or is fatigued. We are dealing with a pilot who is consciously ignoring the rules and putting the lives of everyone on board at immediate risk. The protocol is acknowledging a dark reality. Diplomacy has limits.
At a certain point, conversation is no longer a viable safety tool.
Exactly.
And the mechanics of the ultimatum are incredible. The text gives you 2 distinct options depending on the physical status of the plane. It says you must clearly state your intentions. You are either taking control of the aircraft to return it to a safe environment, or you are removing yourself from the flight entirely.
Those are 2 incredibly distinct yet equally absolute actions.
Yeah.
If you are on the ground, parked at the gate, or taxiing, you utilize the second option. You remove yourself.
Good shit.
You declare the operation unsafe, you physically stand up, pack your flight bag, and walk out of the flight deck.
Right.
By doing so, you automatically ground the flight because commercial regulations dictate the aircraft cannot legally operate without a complete crew.
Wow.
Your physical absence is the ultimate veto.
Walking off the plane is dramatic, but it makes logical sense. It's the first option I have a really hard time wrapping my head around.
The airborne one.
Yes. If you are airborne or hurtling down the runway at 150 miles an hour, you obviously can't walk away.
No, you're stuck.
The text says you must state you are taking control of the aircraft. That sounds like a hostile corporate takeover, but it's happening at 30,000 feet. How does a co-pilot practically execute an ultimatum like that?
It's terrifying to even think about.
I mean, if the captain is willfully negligent, are they really just going to let go of the controls because you announced you're taking them? Doesn't this protocol essentially mandate a physical struggle over the yoke?
That is the terrifying unspoken reality that the text implies.
It has to be, right?
Yeah. In practical terms, taking control means loudly stating the standardized phrase, "I have the flight controls," physically placing your hands on the yoke and throttles, and actively flying the aircraft away from the danger.
Wow.
If the other pilot resists, you may have to physically overpower their inputs. It is the absolute last resort, the nightmare scenario of modern aviation.
It sounds like mutiny.
In a traditional hierarchical sense, it is mutiny. But in the framework of the safety management system, it is the ultimate fulfillment of your duty.
Okay, I see that.
Think about the immense psychological weight of this action. You are a junior first officer. You are sitting next to a captain who might have 20 years of seniority on you, who has thousands of hours more experience, who might be a highly respected figure in the company.
And you're basically telling them they're done.
By announcing you are taking control from them, you are effectively detonating your interpersonal relationship with that captain forever. You are likely initiating a process that will end their career.
Yeah.
You are inviting an incredibly intense investigation into your own actions.
It's the ultimate test of the durability the airlines are looking for. You have to be willing to burn the interpersonal bridge to the ground, salt the earth, and face a tribunal, all to save the physical aircraft.
Exactly.
You are forced to choose the ultimate physical reality of survival over the social reality of the hierarchy.
This is exactly why the interview panel asks the question. They need to look in your eyes and know that if the worst-case scenario unfolds, you won't freeze up out of deference to authority. You will enforce the boundary.
But the protocol isn't over just because the engines are shut down or you've landed safely, or you've walked off the plane.
Nope, there's paperwork.
There is a final step. Step 4. Report up the chain of command. The text states that your final duty is to protect the public and the company. You have to state to the panel that you will file a formal safety report. And the source specifically lists an ASAT report, a NASA report, or contacting management via the Chief Pilot's Office or professional standards.
This raises an important question regarding the philosophy of safety. Why does the text frame this bureaucratic reporting as a duty to the public?
Yeah, that jumped out at me too. It doesn't just say cover your own liability, and it doesn't just say protect the airline's reputation. It says protect the public.
It uses that phrasing because the safety management system operates on a macro level. A single unreported rogue pilot remains a latent threat to every future passenger they fly with.
Right.
If you successfully execute step 3, take control of the aircraft, land safely, and then just go to the hotel and never speak of it again, you haven't solved the systemic problem.
The danger is still out there.
That willfully negligent pilot will simply get back in the cockpit tomorrow with a different, perhaps more passive co-pilot who might not intervene in time. By documenting the event, you are initiating the process to remove the threat from the system entirely.
You are literally protecting people who haven't even bought their airline tickets yet.
Exactly.
That is a profound way to view bureaucracy. It turns paperwork into a literal shield for the public. I want to dive deep into the specific channels the text demands you mentioned.
Okay, let's do it.
It lists ASAB reports, NASA reports, the Chief Pilot's Office, and professional standards. The one that immediately derails my train of thought is the NASA report.
Oh, I know.
NASA, the space agency. Why is the agency that builds rockets tracking whether a commercial pilot flew an approach too fast?
It sounds absurd on the surface, but it is actually the linchpin of the most brilliant safety system in the world. The text mentioning a NASA report implies the existence of a deeply ingrained, highly objective, national-level database for tracking errors. In reality, NASA administers what is called the Aviation Safety Reporting System, or ASRS.
But why NASA and not the FAA? The FAA actually regulates airplanes.
Because the FAA has the power to pull your license and the airline has the power to fire you. If pilots fear punishment, they will hide their mistakes, and the system learns nothing.
Of course.
NASA was chosen precisely because they are a scientific organization with absolutely no regulatory authority over commercial pilots and no financial ties to the airlines. They act as an objective, third-party clearinghouse.
That's brilliant.
A pilot can submit a report about a mistake they made or a conflict in the cockpit. NASA de-identifies the data, stripping out names, flight numbers, and dates, and adds the narrative to a massive database used by researchers to spot systemic trends.
So it's an immunity system.
Essentially, yes. In exchange for reporting the safety issue promptly, the pilot receives a certain level of protection against FAA disciplinary action, provided the error wasn't intentional or criminal. Right. The fact that the interview protocol explicitly requires you to mention these specific reporting structures proves they want a candidate who understands the macro architecture of aviation safety. You aren't just a pilot. You are a data gatherer for a national scientific database.
That completely reframes the job. And what about the other options the text mentions for contacting management? It lists the Chief Pilot's Office and professional standards. How do those function differently from the NASA report?
Those are internal company mechanisms, and the distinction between them is crucial for understanding how airlines manage human capital. The Chief Pilot's Office represents the disciplinary arm of the company.
Okay.
That is the channel you use when the situation involves willful negligence, active violation of SOPs, or a scenario where a pilot fundamentally needs to be suspended, investigated, or fired. It is a corporate, punitive track.
And professional standards.
Professional standards is entirely different. It is typically a union-run, peer-to-peer committee. It operates outside the corporate disciplinary structure.
So it's more like a support group.
You would use this channel if the conflict was resolved, but the other pilot displayed poor judgment, had a terrible attitude, or was dealing with extreme external stress. Maybe they're going through a messy divorce and it's bleeding into their flying.
I see.
It's a mechanism for peer counseling, intervention, and retraining without involving corporate management. Knowing which avenue to use, when to escalate to the boss versus when to utilize peer support, demonstrates a highly nuanced understanding of leadership and conflict resolution.
The granularity of these choices is amazing. But as we walk through this, I just keep thinking about the emotional hangover of this entire four-step process.
Oh, it must be massive.
Imagine the timeline. You start your day, You politely inquire about a flap setting, you get shut down and yelled at, you escalate and call the boss on the radio.
The tension is rising.
The situation deteriorates further. You issue an ultimatum, you physically take control of a 150-ton aircraft from a screaming colleague, you land the plane, you ground the flight, and now your reward is that you have to go sit in a quiet, sterile room and write a highly detailed, legally binding NASA report while your adrenaline crashes.
Yeah, you're shaking the whole time.
The mental and emotional toll of executing this protocol flawlessly is astounding.
Which is exactly why the source material concludes the way it does. The final paragraph of the text zooms out to provide the ultimate overarching takeaway for the airline interview panel.
What's the takeaway?
It states, point blank, airlines do not want passive co-pilots. They want professionals who actively assist the captain, but possess the integrity, durability, and communication skills to enforce company policy the moment safety is compromised.
That really highlights the central paradox of the role. You are being hired specifically to actively assist someone. Your entire job title, first officer, co-pilot, implies a subordinate, supportive role. Your job is to make the captain's life easier. But simultaneously, you are expected to possess the absolute willingness to stop them in their tracks and strip them of their authority. You have to be the perfect assistant and the perfect enforcer at the exact same time.
It is an incredibly difficult tightrope to walk. Balancing subordinate assistance with ultimate safety enforcement requires a very specific emotional makeup. The text highlights 3 specific virtues necessary to walk that tightrope: integrity, durability, and communication skills.
Right.
If we analyze those words in the context of the 4 steps we just unpacked, they map perfectly to the escalating demands of the protocol.
Let's break them down. The first virtue is integrity.
Integrity in this context is doing the right thing when it is uniquely difficult and socially uncomfortable to do so. It is the foundational moral compass that makes you even attempt step 1.
Just speaking up in the first place.
When you see something slightly unsafe, the easiest thing in the world is to ignore it. Speaking up means initiating conflict. Integrity is the internal mechanism that says, I cannot ignore this unsafe action, even though ignoring it would save me from a very unpleasant conversation.
The second virtue the text demands is durability. That's a fascinating word choice for a human being. We usually use that for objects: car tires, batteries, military hardware.
Right, things that take a beating.
It implies you are going to take a severe beating in this process, and you are expected to just absorb it without breaking.
That is exactly what it implies. Durability is the capacity to withstand immense interpersonal pressure over a sustained period. When you reach step 2 and step 3, when you are calling the chief pilot while sitting next to the offender, or when you are issuing an ultimatum and taking physical control, you are going to face massive pushback.
Absolutely.
You are going to face anger, intimidation, screaming, and potentially threats to your career. Durability means you don't fold under that barrage. You withstand the heat. You hold the boundary you established.
And the final virtue is communication skills, which sounds almost quaint after talking about taking physical control of an airplane.
It sounds basic, but communication skills are the mechanism by which you execute the entire protocol without turning it into a chaotic brawl.
Okay.
It is the ability to carefully modulate your voice to maintain that polite, non-escalating tone in step 1. It is the ability to precisely point to the manual to depersonalize the conflict.
Right.
It is the ability to clearly, unambiguously state your intentions before taking control in step 3, so there is no confusion about who is flying the aircraft. You can have all the integrity and durability in the world, but if you cannot communicate your actions clearly and calmly under extreme stress, you simply become another source of chaos and danger in the cockpit.
It paints such a vivid, demanding picture of the ideal candidate. The combination of obedience, independent thought.
Oh, that's a brilliant comparison.
Think about how a good sheepdog operates. It is incredibly obedient. It follows the shepherd's commands flawlessly and eagerly assists in moving the flock. It exists to serve the shepherd's vision.
Yes.
But if the shepherd makes a critical mistake, maybe they get disoriented in the fog and accidentally leads the flock toward the edge of a cliff, that exact same loyal dog will break rank.
Instantly.
It will sprint ahead of the shepherd, turn around, bare its teeth, and physically block the path.
Building on that analogy, the dog's defiance isn't a betrayal of the shepherd. It is the ultimate fulfillment of its duty to the flock.
Right.
The airlines are looking for sheepdogs. They want professionals who will loyally assist 99.9% of the time, but who will physically block the cliff 100% of the time when it matters. They want you to protect the ultimate goal, the safety of the passengers and the integrity of the safety management system above all else, even if it means confronting the person you're supposed to serve.
So as we wrap up this deep dive, let's quickly recap the sheer density of this graduated protocol. It provides a highly structured roadmap for navigating intense conflict.
It sure does.
First, you inquire and advocate. You suppress the urge to attack, assume you might be missing info, and point to a manual to depersonalize the issue.
Step 1.
When that fails, you involve a third party, breaking the localized deadlock by bringing in objective, outside experts who aren't emotionally invested.
Step 2.
If the danger is imminent and willful, you move to step 3, stop the operation, issuing a clear ultimatum to take control or remove yourself from the equation entirely.
The hardest step.
And finally, you report up the chain, protecting the public and the system by documenting the event through independent channels like the NASA ARS system. Demonstrating your mastery of these 4 escalating steps is how you prove to that interview panel that you aren't just a pilot, but a guardian of their safety culture.
And I think the true value of this source material is how universally applicable it is. If you are listening to this right now, even if you never set foot in a cockpit, you can deploy this framework. Think about a junior nurse in an ICU spotting a senior, highly respected surgeon making a critical medication error. Or a junior developer realizing the lead engineer is pushing code that violates user privacy laws.
The stakes are still incredibly high.
The psychological barriers are identical to the cockpit, and the steps to overcome them are exactly the same. Depersonalize the conflict by pointing to the hospital policy or the project brief.
Right.
Utilize objective third parties, like a compliance officer or an ethics board, when you are rebuffed. Know exactly what constitutes an unacceptable risk, and be willing to enforce your hard boundary to stop the damage.
Enforce the boundary.
And finally, ensure the systemic issue is documented so it doesn't happen to the next patient or user. It is an incredibly robust tool for managing any high-stakes team dynamic.
It really is. It gives you a cognitive script for the hardest, most isolating moments in your professional life.
Yeah.
But I want to leave you with one final lingering thought that the text doesn't explicitly answer, and it's a terrifying one. The entire protocol, especially in those crucial early steps, relies heavily on one major assumption. In step 1, it tells you to point directly to the company manual or FAA regulations as the ultimate objective source of truth.
Right.
It assumes the manual has the answer to your emergency. It assumes the engineers on the ground foresaw the problem. But what do you do when the extreme, unprecedented crisis you are facing isn't in the manual at all?
That is a chilling thought.
What happens when you are flying through a cascading system failure that the authors of the standard operating procedures never imagined? When does strict adherence to the rules actually become the danger? And if the manual is blank, how do you negotiate a safety intervention then? That is a question that might just require an entirely different kind of deep dive.